Hello students, welcome to this class. We'll be talking still about diseases of crops 2, because this is the second aspect of diseases of crops that we'll be looking at. A continuation from the previous topic, which was still diseases of crops, but remember we looked at some major diseases, their symptoms and so on, and their control. But here we're going to look at another aspect of diseases of crops. Now, imagine a world where every farmer's field were thriving with vibrant crops, where each harvest was bountiful and ensured food security for communities. Now, picture a sudden shift. These once healthy fields become plagued by diseases, leading to wilted plants, reduced yields, and economic hardship for farmers. This drastic or dramatic change will not only affect farmers but the entire food system. So we'll get to know more about this in the topic diseases of crops too. So by the end of the lesson, we should be able to state the general effects of diseases on crop production and highlight the economic importance of crop diseases and also explain the preventive and control measures of diseases. So let's just remind ourselves of some terminologies like disease and pathogens. So what are disease? What is a disease? It's a deviation or departure of a plant from the normal state of health, presenting marked symptoms or outward visible signs. Now let's look at pathogens. That these are disease-causing living organisms which pass through a regular cycle of development and reproduction. So let's look at the general effects of diseases on crop production. We have here, the first point we have here is that diseases generally reduce the yield or productivity of crops. Definitely once the anatomy of a crop or the tissues and the organs of a crop is affected, the leaves are affected where photosynthesis cannot be carried out effectively, definitely the yield of such crops will also be affected, or the productivity of such crops will be affected. Diseases reduce the quality of crops. Now, of course, there's a deviation from the normal state of health, the normal organs, the way the organs of the plants are affected, the leaves are affected. There are either there's twisting of the leaves, and this can eventually lead to a reduction in the quality. The seeds are also, like for example, maize moth, which are formed, which makes the seeds develop a mass of black spores, and same as rice. This can actually reduce the quality of the crops. Disease can also kill or cause the death of the whole plant. Eventually, once the tissues and organs are distorted or affected by disease, the plant will eventually die. So disease can kill the whole plant. Now, disease can also increase the cost of production through the expenses incurred in the course of controlling them. Now, diseases lead to heavy economic losses and of course low yields, and no farmer will want the diseases to thrive, so he or she will make effort to control these diseases, and this will definitely lead to an increase in the cost of production as against a field that was not diseased or crops that are not diseased. So that will definitely lead to an increase in the overall cost of production. Now, the activities are retarded. The activities of diseases retard the growth in crop plants. Definitely, once there's the presence of diseases, the crops will not grow properly, and definitely that will lead to a retarded growth of our crop plants. There's also damage to crop plant parts, that's the leaves and the stem are also affected by diseases, and this leads to a reduction in photosynthesis. They also make the fruits and vegetables unattractive and unmarketable. As you can see, the diseased fruit here is no longer attractive, and definitely no consumer will want to buy this for consumption. So that is one of the outcomes of the effects of diseases on our fruits and vegetables. Just like citrus scabs, you see swellings of on the citrus, on the fruit, which is not attractive to anybody who will not, nobody will be willing, no consumer will be willing to buy such a fruit. So we have disease caused the malformation of parts of plants or the whole plant. That's like witch's broom that affects cassava. You find out that if soil as a sweet potato too, which leads to reduction in the nodes, the internode, that's the point between a node, two nodes, that reduction in the internode, which is a distortion of the plant. And this is a malformation of the whole plant. So that's an effect of disease as seen in witch's broom, cassava witch's broom. Okay, now let's look at the economic importance of crop diseases. That is its effects on commercial activities. When we're looking at the economic importance of crop diseases, that is its effect on commercial activities. Let's look at this. So what is the economic importance? When we look at economic importance, we students tend to look at it as the positive aspect. When they say something is important, they feel it's of benefit to you. But economic importance is the impact it actually causes on both the farmer and the crop. It's of importance to the farmer for him to understand it has an implication on the farmer. So it's important to the farmer at that point, whether it's of negative importance or positive importance, it affects the farmer's output, the farmer's yield, the farmer's finances. So that's what is termed economic importance. So diseases have a negative effect, but it's still termed an economic importance to of the disease, either on the farmer or on the crop. So let's look at the economic importance of crop diseases. Now, they cause reduction in the income of the farmers. The farmer has to spend money trying to control these diseases, and that leads to an increase in cost of production, which will eventually lead to a reduction in income, because if he has competitors who are producing the same crops and they are not faced with diseases, they will end up selling their products, and there's usually a standard price for products, and this farmer will have to still sell his produce at that same price, but because he spends money on controlling diseases, he will end up having a lower profit margin, and that leads to reduction in income. Now, diseases also lead to food shortage of famine. Once there's disease outbreak, a lot of crops are lost. Some are, that can also lead to shortage of food, famine as well. Disease can also lead to an increase in the price of agricultural produce due to scarcity. Of course, once there's an outbreak of disease and affects a lot of farmers, there will be low production or low output, which will now lead to scarcity, and those that are actually available in the market will end up becoming high in price. So that will lead to a hike in price. So that is another effect or economic importance of crop diseases. Now, they also lead to shortage of raw materials, causing closure of industries. One there's, agricultural produce serve as raw materials for certain industries or for some industries, and those industries are called agro-based industries. So, for example, the textile industry, if there's a disease outbreak of, for example, cotton and cotton plants, which will definitely lead to a reduction in the yield, and this will eventually affect the textile industry, because there will be a decline in the production of cotton, as well as many other industries that are connected to agri, like cocoa, black pod disease of cocoa. If it destroys the cocoa farms, the pods are damaged, they will definitely will not be such raw material will be lacking or become scarce for the beverage industries, and that will be a major problem for such an industry when the industry runs out of means of getting its raw materials, which could lead to the closure of that industry. Now, it also leads to economic instability. Of course, once the financial state of the farmers are affected. There's shortage of food, scarcity of food, hike in prices of food due to scarcity. All of this can lead to economic instability. Now, let's look at how we can prevent and control diseases of crops. We have the cultural control, and we have the biological control, we have chemical control, but let's start with cultural control. This has to do with carrying out certain farming practices in order to control diseases of crops. The first we have is practicing of crop rotation. This helps to break the life cycle of certain um, diseases and the cycle of certain diseases, as well as the insect pests that are also means through which certain diseases are transmitted, like viral diseases, like the maize streak disease. You know, these insect pests, once you practice crop rotation, which is planting crops in a definite sequence. For example, you have three plots, plot A, B, C. Plot A, I cultivate rice. Plot B, I cultivate cassava. Plot C, I cultivate cowpea. And the next season, that plot A that I cultivated rice, I will no longer cultivate rice there. I could cultivate cowpea in plot A, while the plot B that I cultivated cassava, I'll now cultivate rice. And the plot C where I cultivated cowpea, I'll now cultivate cassava. That's a rotation. And this helps to control the spread of diseases. And also use of resistant varieties is a cultural control method. Regular weeding is also a control method. That's farm sanitation. And timeliness of planting and harvesting, which is early planting or early harvesting, this can also help. This fall under cultural control methods. We also have burning of infected crops, which is termed rogaine. That's a cultural control method. Now let's look at biological control methods of controlling diseases. This involves the use of natural enemies of the disease vectors to reduce or eliminate the disease. In this case, insects are what causes these diseases. So where you use other predators to get rid of such insects, that falls under biological control of diseases. Looking at chemical control, here we're talking about the use of chemicals to control diseases such as fungicides, nematicides. Of course, fungicides is to control fungal diseases, nematicides is to control nematodes, and this help to prevent and control plant diseases. So it falls under chemical control of plant diseases. Okay, so we just need to have a recap on what we've learned in this topic. So we learned about the general effects of diseases on crop production, and some of these diseases include which include diseases that generally reduce the yield or productivity of crops. By looking at the general effects, just a recap, diseases also reduce the quality of crops. They can also kill or cause the death of the whole plant. We also looked at the economic importance of crop diseases, which are diseases cause reduction in the income of the farmer. They also lead to food shortage or famine. They also lead to increase in the prices of agricultural produce due to scarcity. And finally, we looked at the preventive and control measures of diseases of crops, which can be by cultural control, where we talk about rogaine, removing, uprooting, and burning infected plants, crop rotation, early planting. We also looked at biological control, which involves the use of natural enemies like predators to control insect pests, which are the means by which viral diseases are transmitted. Then we also looked at the chemical control, where we use chemicals to control diseases, like using fungicides and nematicides to control our diseases. So thank you. Let's just have a look at some questions in order to get a better understanding. So let's go to this question. Okay. This question says that streak disease of crops commonly attack. We have millet A, B sorghum, C maize, D rice. The answer is maize. strict disease attacks means. Next we have is most viral diseases of plants are transmitted by, in our previous class when I was talking about diseases of the causal organism, the mode of transmission, the symptoms, and the control. Whenever we talk about viral diseases, I kept on mentioning that most viral diseases are transmitted by insects. So the answer here is insects. Next we have is viral diseases of crop plants are best controlled by. Now this is technical because when we say they are controlled, caused by insects, we tend to look at the um, best control method to be applying insecticides to kill the insects. But no, the best control method for viral disease is to plant resistant varieties. So that's the answer. Okay, so I'll encourage you to test and practice more questions to test your knowledge base on the topic so far. Thank you.